Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Baze here, and today I'm here to talk to you about Arms Warrior and the basics, talent, stats, trinkets, gear, and single target and AoE rotation. So let's get into it. So for single target, you're going to be taking this talent tree. It's the Slayer spec, and its niche is that you basically apply 3 marked for execution stacks, and that is ideally when you want to send execute, because when you send execute at 3 stacks, you reduce blade storm by 15 seconds. It's 5 seconds per stack, so if you send it at 1 stack, you're only going to reduce it by 5. Send it at 2 stacks, you're going to reduce it by 10, and 3 stacks, you reduce it by 15. It also applies 2 stacks of overwhelm to the target per stack of marked execute consumed. Next, for AoE talents, you're going to want to take Colossus. And Colossus's gimmick mechanic is basically you send all your CDs, you wait until you get 10 stacks to demolish, and then you send a big CD and it just pumps in AoE. So back to single target. And for stats, you want to focus crit and haste, and then you can do verse mastery or mastery verse. Ideally you want to sim this. It's going to vary from person to person depending on the current gear you have. But the 2 highest priority stats are haste, crit. And then next for trinkets, you're going to want to get House of Cards and Eye of Kazan. These are the 2 best trinkets by far. And then gear, you pretty much just want to sim whatever you get. You know, if you get an upgrade in Vault, you're going to want to sim, is it an upgrade over your current ring or your current piece of gear? You know, this most of the time, early in the tier, you're just going to take whatever the higher item level is anyway. But as you get later on into the season, you're going to want to start simming pieces of gear, see what's better, see what's not. So let's hop right into the single target rotation. The rotation is very simple. If you just follow the tips I give you, I promise you it's almost impossible to mess up. Basically what you do is you send pull on pull, you want to send charge, rend, roar, avatar, Colossus smash, mortal strike, blade storm, mortal strike, overpower. It's a very, very simple rotation. And then you see there I had 3 stacks of marked execution, so you want to focus and spin those. Now there are a few conditions with executes that you want to focus on, and that is for execute specifically, if you have 2 stacks of sudden death, you want to send a stack, and you also want to keep Ashen Juggernaut up. You see this debuff right here that has stacks of 5. Ideally you do not want to let that fall off, so if it's about to fall off like it is now, boom, send execute. You may want to make sure you maintain that at all times on single target. Sometimes you'll get unlucky, you'll get a mechanic, and the debuff will fall off, but that is okay. It's unfortunately it's just gonna happen. So anyway, outside of sending your CDs, you pretty much just maintain your rend, you maintain mortal strike, send overpower, send your CDs when they come up, off CD. And then you follow the same rotation. Now, if you do get an opportunist proc, let me see if I can get one for you guys. Hang on 1 second. There you go. If you get an opportunist proc, you want to make sure that is sent over Blade Storm. However, if you don't get that proc, you're just prioring Mortal Strike outside of CDs. It's that simple. If you don't have Mortal Strike up, you send Overpower, and if you don't have either up, you send Slam. The single target rotation is that simple. Now let's talk about Colossus and its AoE rotation. It's a very simple rotation once you get going, but the setup for it can be a little confusing. So basically what we're trying to do is not waste any of our big global cooldowns. But since we are GCD locked, which means we can only cast one big global cooldown at a time, you can't cast them all at once. You want to min-max having uptime with certain buffs and certain debuffs. So for example, the opener should be charge, cleave to apply mortals, to apply deep wounds, thunderclap to get rend applied to the entire pack, and then you roar, sweeping strikes, ravager, avatar, warbreaker into cleave, and then once you get 10 stacks demolish, you want to send that right away. Now the reason you're sending them in this order is because you don't want to waste uptime, and some buffs, like for example sweeping strikes, last 15 seconds, right? So it's not going to fall off as I'm setting up. And the reason you want to send avatar and warbreaker last is because if you were to send them off rip, they would be wasting, you'd be wasting the cooldown effectively by sending all the other GCDs after it. So you'd only get, like for example 12 seconds out of avatar, versus if you send it towards the end, you'll get around 19-18 because you had to send a warbreaker after it. So you'll probably realistically get 18 seconds out of it. So that is the reason we send them the way we do. But to show you, for example, you charge in, you mortal strike, or sorry, you cleave, you thunderclap, you roar, sweeping strikes, then you ravager, then you avatar, warbreaker, again, you cleave, and then once you get 10 stacks of demolish, you build up for it, you spam cleave. All right, I'm at 10 stacks, boom, send it. Now, there are some downsides to demolish that you should be aware of. If the mob is pulled away from you as you're casting demolish, you're not going to get the damage off. If the mob dies as you're casting demolish, you don't get the damage off. If you're not facing that mob and specifically, you won't get the damage off. So you just got to be careful. Sometimes you'll get bad RNG, unfortunately, and you'll just do less damage because of that. But sometimes you'll get a reset. As you can see, I was just able to cast Mortal Strike there 3 times back to back, which felt really good. But that's pretty much the AoE rotation. You just want to maintain that. It's pretty simple.